This is Gege AKUTAMIS, the artist behind Jujutsu Kaisen, one of the most popular mangas of the recent years. When you first look at his art, you will instantly notice his strong line work and captivating panels. But that isn't everything. Just look at these manga panels. His art has really good expressions and he knows how to deliver mood, which is a really important part of telling a story. Today, we will go over Gege's art style and analyze things like his brushwork, proportions, or even how he makes his expressions so good. The first thing I notice when looking at Gege's work is that he knows how to use contrast very well, be it in his outfits, the hair, or the faces. He knows where to put contrast to make the scene feel the way he wants to. This makes the silhouettes of his characters stand out. Especially the clothes play a major role in doing so, since they are often just a black and white drip. What I find generally interesting about his clothes is the way he draws the clothing folds. On dark clothes, he will often cel shade them, using a gray value, and then he breaks it up with a bunch of hatching and other shapes. This makes them feel very organic and expressive at the same time. To enhance this even more, he will often make use of half tones. But half tones are not limited to his clothes. He uses them in so many other places too. Moving on to bright clothing, he often defines the folds through single lines or overlapping lines, and then he hatches them where the shadows would be. But it can also happen that he doesn't hatch them at all. I think he just does this depending on the complexity of the scene and how much detail he wants to show. While clothes are an important thing, nothing stands out more on a character than the face. So let's take a closer look at the way Gege draws them. First of all, at least from what I can tell, the proportions seem to be pretty lifelike. The face is split in about 3 equal thirds, but since he likes to use many sharp lines, the characters still break realism. Of course, the most interesting thing on a character's face are always the eyes. Gege likes to make them very simple though. The upper eyelids are thicker than the lower ones, and depending on the character, he adds lashes or leaves them out. This goes for both upper and lower eyelids. Speaking of the lower eyelids, Gege likes to draw 2 parallel lines for them, which shows the volume of the skin there really good. You will see those parallel lines often in his work, but more on that later. Of course, when we're already talking about the face, we can't forget about the nose and the mouth. The way Gege draws his noses is usually pretty simple. Either he draws in the nostrils, or one single line can also do the job. He also suggests the ending of the nose up at the eyebrows very often. Well, that's the front view, but now the question arises, how does he draw it in side view? Don't worry, it's pretty simple. Gege really likes to emphasize the brow ridge very sharply, so you can exaggerate that a bit. And then it's just a sharp and pointy nose, one nostril to finish the job, and that's it most of the time. Lastly, we need to talk about mouths. The way Gege draws them is just insanely expressive, and I think this plays a big role in making his expressions so good. He really likes to exaggerate them a lot, and the cool thing about it, they are so easy to draw. Look up an expression you want to draw. Draw in the rough outline of the lips, and then distribute the line weight to points that are overlapping. Then just draw in the teeth. Make sure to think about the 3 dimensions the teeth have, like they're still going back inside your mouth. And then fill the rest inside with black. And then you can go ahead and cut inside the teeth shape on both ends. First to suggest the individual teeth, and then to show the gums. You can also draw in the tongue or hatch the inside parts of the teeth or mouth, but overall that's everything there is to it, with the main focus being the teeth. Another thing Gege is really good at is making you think there is a lot of detail. While he certainly puts in a lot of detail in his artworks, he also makes you believe there's a lot of it inside the hair. When drawing the hair, you should always focus on the big silhouette first. And after that, Gege goes crazy on individual hair strands. On bright hair, he likes to draw a lot of strands, while on dark hair, he usually uses cel shading. Remember how he does the same thing with clothes? But on the dark hair, he uses white for the strands, while on the clothes, it was a grayish value. Now, dear viewer, we have to talk about something very serious. Something most artists hate. Something many people run away from. Hands. Hands are a difficult thing to draw, especially from imagination, but Gege is really good at drawing them, so of course we need to talk about it. If you showed these panels to me and asked me who drew these hands, I would most likely say Gege. There are so many things screaming Gege to me, like for example the sharp lines and the way he shows the knuckles. Also, do you remember the two parallel lines in the eyes? Well, he uses them on his hands too. For example, you can see them here for the metacarpals or even here for the knuckles. Also, he likes to hatch the knuckles. Going more forward, he usually makes the fingertips more boxy. The last thing I want to talk about when it comes to characters is the way he draws anatomy. It's usually more suggestive and less fixed. I feel like Gege doesn't care as much about being accurate. Not that he has much time to be either, the life of a manga artist surely doesn't have a lot of free time, but I think this gives his panels personality. He often suggests anatomy through lines and hatching, which honestly is often already enough to sell a scene. Let's be honest, most people are probably only going to look at one panel for like 3 seconds and then they move on to the next. Now, with all the character aspects out of the way, let's talk about his brushwork. In action scenes, he gets loose sometimes and uses lines of the same width and intensity throughout the characters, and thicker line weight is only placed at intersecting points or edges. Now, the way he does line weight still applies to the normal non-action scenes, but he likes to refine these a little more, since the characters usually don't need to be as flowy as in action scenes. Moving on to his hatching, it has often got very fine lines but still separated so much that you can tell the lines apart easily. I also think it varies in intensity in certain areas. For example, dark areas have darker hatching than bright ones. Also, environments often have a way more detailed hatching than the characters, which again shows contrast. Hatching is something he uses for so many things like wrinkles, anatomical features, hair, environments, clothes and so much more. It's almost everywhere. However, I never really saw him cross-hatching. He does something like this and I think you could call it cross-hatching, but to me it reminds me more of a shoelace pattern and therefore I call it shoelace hatching. Usually though, I only see him hatch with parallel lines. The tilt may vary, but the lines of an area always follow the same direction. The way he utilizes hatching surely makes his art recognizable, but do you remember the parallel lines he uses for hands and eyes? Well, as said before, he uses them in so many different places that need to show their three-dimensionality. In my opinion, these are also a key component of his style. But now the interesting thing that makes his current art so recognizable, his brush. Currently, he uses a brush that has a lot of tapering. It almost has a dot-like beginning and then tapers off quickly. This is a brush many pros use, even in the comic industry. The difference is just in how you use it and how strong you want the taper to be. I found this brush by Mameo on the Clip Studio Asset Store. And it should come pretty closely to the one Gege uses if you adjust the pressure settings well. I also think adjusting the G pen could work. However, I don't know anything about adjusting brushes, and that's also the reason I still just use a basic round brush for nearly all of my work. But I still tried his brush out for my own tries. However, I couldn't get the tapering to work quite right, and therefore his line work didn't work out for me. Now, with all the analytical things out of the way, I wanted to try his style out myself. First, I started with some panel studies from his manga. After that, I moved on to my favorite character in this manga, Sukuna. I mean, he's just so evil, you need to draw him. For him, however, the panel only reached until the lower half of his face, so I had to come up with the rest from imagination. Then I decided to do some hands, and I think they turned out pretty okay. And after that, it was time to try the style without his manga panels. And you will quickly see that it is often hit or miss. It was really hard for me to not move into my own kind of style, and I messed up badly on Toji. Next up, however, I tried Megumi, and I think he went alright. Then I thought some hands would be cool, and after the hands, I messed up again. The pose just wasn't right, the character was too thin, because Aoi is usually pretty buff. And after the messed up Toji and Aoi, I decided why not finish it off with good old Sukuna, and I think he went alright again. If I had to critique myself, I would say that the line weight is often too much or too little, and my anatomy was often off and I suggested it the wrong way. Gege does it more in a freer, looser way than I did, so I would have needed to loosen up even more. At least the hands turned out pretty good though. So to summarize everything we learned today, let's quickly recap. Gege likes to use contrast and he knows how to utilize it very well in his scenes, which makes his characters stand out. The facial features and the way he utilizes lines and hatching are a major part of his style. And he also likes to make people believe that there is a lot of detail, for example in his hairs. Also, I think something that gives Gege's drawings a lot of personality is just the way he loosens up when drawing. I think he's more focused on actually telling a story instead of being really accurate with his art, which, to be honest, is actually the thing you really need to do when doing a manga. And of course, the thing that's making his art very recognizable nowadays is just the way he uses his brush. This strong dot-like beginning and then the fast tapering really makes his style unique. I hope this video was helpful to some of you and you can go ahead and practice drawing like Gege AKUTAMIS. If you watched until here, thank you. You might not know it, but the percentage of people getting here is really low. So I hope you have a nice day and thanks for watching.